Hey everyone, so I'm going to start my first video of where to start. So where to start with budgeting. There's 3 steps in my opinion. The first is just realizing what you spend your money on and what income is actually coming in to cover all that. 2 would be to start cutting out expenses. And 3 would be to start an emergency fund. I think these are 3 really important steps in starting your budgeting lifestyle. So number 1, realizing what you spend your money on. This is probably the hardest step. A, because you're starting something, and B, because you have to face the reality of what you're spending all your money on. You might realize, like me, that you're spending over $200 a month on Starbucks. So ridiculous to do. There's no reason to spend that much money on any one item, especially coffee. So just really sit down, go through whatever money cards you use, credit card, debit card, receipts, whatever you use, go through for at least the past 3 months and see every month average of what you spend on groceries, what you spend on eating out, whether that be coffee, lunch, or dinner, or whatever other snack that you like to do, like those 2 o'clock a.m. Taco Bell runs sometimes. Also, your groceries, your gas money, bills, obviously, insurance, your television, your cell phone, your PG&E, all of those things, all of your bills, student loans, don't forget about those. Clothes, if you spend money on clothes, obviously you need to write down how frequently you do buy clothes, how often, like if you have a job that isn't in fashion, obviously you're probably going to buy a little more clothing than somebody that's just in finance and whatever. I don't really buy that many clothes, so. And then also household items, things you use to clean with, things you use to cook with, things like trash bags and stuff like that that you buy often. I know that we do for sure. So once you have all that written out, and it's scary and it takes a while to kind of remember all the little things like, oh, I do get a Birchbox, or oh yeah, like I do go to Jamba Juice every once in a while, or my work does have that monthly happy hour that we all go to, or whatever it may be. All of that's important and you need to put all of that in. So the next step after, well, I guess this is that was 1A, this was 1B, is figuring out how much you actually make. If you're on salary, it'll be really easy to figure out because you get the same amount of money every 2 weeks or once a month, and it's not going to change unless there's a bonus or something like that. If you're hourly and you're full time, it'll be pretty easy to estimate because if you are working 40 hours a week and you're roughly going to get the same paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month. If you do piecework or you're in the union, or you have a job that are small jobs or they're dependent on what work is available, what I would recommend is seeing how much you got paid for, like the least amount in 1 month. So say 1 month you made $5,000 but another month you only made $1,800. That's what you need to live off of, is that $1,800, not the $5,000. You should never shape your life around the most you make. Because what if something happens? What if you lose your job and you have all these expenses and all these bills that you thought that you could afford, but really you can only afford maybe twice a year? So that's important. That's a really important thing to go by, is what you make in the lowest month. Not in the highest, not in the medium, not in the average, but in the lowest month. And then everything else after that, it's just savings or paying off debts or whatever it may be. So that's actually a pretty good position to be in. So once you figure all that out, you need to budget all of that. So you need to figure out, yeah, I am spending $500 a month on groceries and I'm spending $250 out and I'm spending all of these things. You need to write it all down and budget it. So say you make $2,000 a month. Every month doesn't change. You need to figure out what all goes in there that you could afford. And the first thing you start out with is food, and then your bills, and then your rent. All of those things are important, and then it kind of trickles down from there. So you need to figure out your budget. Again, this is going to take forever. It might take it might take a few nights in 1 week. It might take a full month, especially if you have a partner and you have to talk to them and figure out everything that goes into your budget. And it sucks and it's hard to realize, but once you get that down and you realize what you're actually spending your money on, you're going to be surprised and it's going to be shocking and exciting. And I don't know, maybe you're not spending as much as you really like, you're not spending as much as you thought you were, which is also kind of exciting too. So that's step 1A and B, and then we go on to step 2. Step 2 is cutting shit out of your life. This is also a really hard but very important step, especially if you're just starting your budget and you use a credit card or you use all these things. So a few kind of pointers that I did when I first started budgeting that I cut out is I had a cell phone that I had like 5 gigs of data on it, and I never used more than a 1.5, because at home I'm on Wi-Fi. When I'm at work, I'm on Wi-Fi. If I'm at a friend's house, usually I'm on their Wi-Fi. So I never really used it that often unless I was using like a map or scrolling through Instagram at the doctor's office or something like that. So I cut it down to 2 gigs, which is the lowest that my cell phone offers, which is totally fine. It's much less expensive. I was paying like $130 a month on my cell phone alone, which is ridiculous for one person. So now I pay $70 a month, and that's with my insurance and everything. So much better. Things like that can go towards your television. Like, do you need all those premium channels, or can you get by just using internet and using Netflix or streaming Amazon Prime or whatever other things you already probably have that you can use? Or if you have a great friend base like we do, like we trade. So like for example, we have Netflix and I use my mom's Amazon Prime, and then we trade. And then also I have a friend that has HBO Go. They use our Netflix, we use their HBO Go. So it just kind of, you can use that to your advantage and use like a group TV, I guess you could say. That's a really, really easy way to do things. There's also this new program, I don't know how new it is actually, it's called Sling, and it starts out at $20 a month. So if you just have internet and you're doing really well and you only pay like $40 a month, this is $20 a month, and you can get all the channels that you think you need and all that good stuff. Personally, the only thing we watch on cable is football games, and then I think the basic cable that we had to get with our internet has most of the games, and otherwise we go over to a friend's house. So it works out. Other ways you can lower your monthly income, or your expenditures, is just looking at how often you go out. Like, do you really need to go out to dinner like 4 or 5 times a week, or not even dinner, breakfast, lunch, whatever? Probably not. And the old standby is brown bag it to lunch. That alone will save you so much money. And it sucks because you have to like think about it and like go grocery shopping and all that stuff. But trust me, it's so much worth it in the long run. Even if you just start out taking leftovers, just take leftovers to work. And what I did for a while is, for about a year, I only did bag lunches and I never bought lunch, and it was hard. And then I got a new job, and it was like a very social thing to go out to lunch like every single day. And instead of falling into that trap, I allowed myself and I budgeted myself to go to lunch every Friday. And everybody kind of knew that. So it was like, hey, it's lunch Friday, Kayla can come, or, whatever. And it was kind of fun because it was like a really fun end of your week, and it just worked out really well. But I budgeted for it, and that was the difference, instead of just wildly spending money. So just start cutting out expenses. That's step 2. And it'll be easier than you think it is to start cutting things out that you didn't even realize that you are still spending money on. If you go to a really expensive gym and you only go once a week, why not go to a less expensive gym? Planet Fitnesses, I think, are everywhere. They're $10 a month. And again, if you only go once or twice a week, you don't need to be spending $100 a month on a gym membership. So that's another way to get around it. So step 1A and B, and then step 2, and now we're on to step 3. The emergency fund. This, I think, is just as important as the other 2. Once you figure out your budget, you need to start saving for an emergency fund. And you're probably thinking, well, I have all these bills, I don't know how much money I can put aside. So if you do have credit card payments, start only paying the minimum, and do that while you are saving for your emergency fund. And then you can go back to choosing one to do a double payment on, or an extra payment on, and then so on and so forth. But don't try to do all of them at one time. That will be a different video. I'm getting ahead of myself. But emergency fund. They're so freaking important just to have some cash stashed away for the case of an emergency, for new tires, new brakes. A lot of stuff with cars is coming to my mind, but like medical bills, things like that. Somebody gets sick and you need to fly somewhere. All of those things are considered an emergency. And if you don't have any money saved up, you're usually going to fall back on a credit card, and that's not a good thing. So I say save an emergency fund. I've heard anybody say from $500 to $5,000 is a good emergency fund. I think a good place to start is between $1,000 and $1,500 in an emergency fund. That will usually cover pretty much anything you run into that is on a somewhat smaller scale. And then once you do use some of it, it's a little easier to save back up than if you had like a huge emergency fund and you used all of it and then you're trying to save that back up again. And plus, most people can get up to $1,000 or so in within a month to 6, 7, 8 months. But that's going to be your first priority, is getting that built up before you start paying off any of your debt. And it's just important, and it makes you feel so much better to know you have a little bit of a safety net to kind of fall back on. And that's also extremely important, and just to have a sense of mind while you're going through this process. So those are my first 3 steps on getting started. 1, realizing what money you're spending. 1B, how much you're actually making. 2, cutting out expenses. And 3, saving up for an emergency fund. And during that whole realizing what you're spending, that's when you need to create your budget as well. And it's pretty straightforward, but I might make another video of just like how to budget and whatever, but you should be able to just write down all of your expenses and figure out when they're due and what paycheck you get to pay it with and all that good stuff. And you should definitely have money left over to put in your emergency fund. So if you have any questions, or if I didn't cover anything or something wasn't clear, feel free to ask below. And hopefully this series will keep going.